Well, for many, many years now, I've been ticking off the ever-increasing sources of radiation to which humans are subjected. And they are so numerous and being added to all the time. It was very clear to me that there is an agenda here of subjecting humanity to more and more radiation. It's a long story and there are many, many elements to why, but the fact that they're doing it is becoming obvious. And so when the explosions at Fukushima happened in Japan, from my perspective, having looked at this over a number of years, it was just too much of a gift to this cabal, given the scale, the stunning scale of radiation that not only was released immediately, but has gone on being released ever since. And, you know, there's reports recently out of Europe of finding these high levels of radiation, and it's like, where's it coming from? Well, there's a very good chance of where it's coming from, because Fukushima has been pouring this stuff out incessantly, day after day after day. So I started looking into it, and one of the first things I noticed, and other people started looking at this as well, was that the explosion that was captured on video of one of the reactors exploding in Fukushima, and the explosion, the smoke stack of a small nuclear device were extraordinarily similar. So I then started looking at anything that could have explained this. And I came across the fact that in the years leading up to Fukushima, those reactors and that site in general had installed a new surveillance camera and sensor system with these this technology put into the reactors and other parts of the site. And when you look at it, you know today that technology is getting ever lighter, it's getting ever smaller, and yet when you looked at these cameras and sensors that were installed into Fukushima in the months before this happened, they were like ludicrous. You know, you get these little tiny kind of mobile phones now, and yet when mobile phones started, they were about that blooming big, and you're as old as you here with two hands, you know. Well, that was the kind of difference between the kind of surveillance technology you see normally now and these things. They weighed 1,000 pounds. And then, when you put one of those next to what they call a gun-type nuclear weapon, which is a small nuclear device, if you take the casing off the gun-type nuclear weapon, what is inside is, shall we say, not a million miles from what these cameras and sensors look like. And it was, you know, with other information, it was my view, I concluded, that these were small nuclear devices and that Fukushima was blown up on purpose to release that radiation as part of this much wider radiation agenda to irradiate the atmosphere of the planet much more than it has been up to this point. And then I asked, of course, I asked the question, who put these devices in, these sensors in? And it turns out to be an Israeli company located at Dimona in Israel. And Dimona is the location of the massive Israeli nuclear weapons program. And I can tell you from 22 years of research, there is no such thing as an Israeli security company that is not a front for Mossad. It's not allowed. And then there was a man called Arnie Gunderson, who's a nuclear engineer. And he made a speech in Boston, and it was almost like an alert. It was like, hey, we found something about Fukushima which should not have happened, and this has great implications for you know, containment design and nuclear design. And what he'd found from the footage is that the explosions at Fukushima moved so fast that they passed the speed of sound and entered the realm of what is known as a detonation wave. And as he pointed out, a nuclear explosion at a nuclear plant like that should never, ever become a detonation wave. It produces what they call a deflagration wave, which is below the speed of sound. And his alert was, hey, we had no idea this was possible. He says, I've talked to a bunch of chemists and we can't work out how it is possible for a nuclear explosion at a plant like that to cause a detonation wave. Well, maybe it wasn't a nuclear explosion of that kind that caused the detonation wave, but a device designed to detonate. And it is my strong view that Fukushima was blown up on purpose to release this stunning level of radiation. And then, of course, the question comes, okay, so you're saying they put these things in and blew it up, and then they just sit around strumming their fingers, hoping that some kind of earthquake and tsunami comes along as cover for it. Well, no. Which is when we come to what you just mentioned, HAARP. And HAARP relates to a man very well known in this area of the world, Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was the scientific genius of the 20th century, and if he was alive today, he'd be the scientific genius probably of the first part of the 21st century. He had understood many things about the nature of our reality. He'd understood about the electromagnetic fields that you can access and turn into usable warmth and power, which the cabal that owns the energy industry of the world has been suppressing because it doesn't want people to have access to this free energy, which we could have. And by the way, the same people who are saying we must lower carbon emissions because of global warming, which is another blooming nonsense, this human-caused global warming lie, they're the same people that are suppressing the development of use of free energy technology, which Tesla developed and understood, which could eliminate the carbon power systems, immediately. So it's all a lie. But what HAARP does is it fires radio waves, very, very focused and very powerful, into the upper atmosphere known as the ionosphere, and it entrains, as they say. It gets the ionosphere to vibrate in sympathy with the radio wave. And this creates a situation where this entrainment adds massive, massive, massive power to the original radio wave, and then it's bounced back to Earth, massively greater power, and they can hit a specific spot on the Earth. And if they can hit somewhere which is vulnerable in terms of earthquakes anyway, and they can do it at a specific frequency, because the earthquakes have a frequency like everything does, then they can cause an earthquake and they can cause a tsunami. And they can cause, with the same principle, they can cause very great extremes of weather, like hundreds of unprecedented tornadoes that appeared in 2007 and killed hundreds of people in America. And, people say, oh, no, you can't mess with the weather, it's ridiculous. Well, hold on a second. There are international treaties which countries have signed saying that it's illegal to manipulate the weather and to use it as a weapon of war. Well, they're not going to have those treaties unless they know it's possible. It's ridiculous. And so we have a situation where, yes, of course there are natural earthquakes, but they don't all have to be. And you can bomb somewhere from an aircraft, or you can cause devastating earthquakes and devastating weather events, and you can bring the countries to their knees that way. And in many ways, people within countries many of them anyway, within the establishment, you know, they know that Fukushima and that earthquake and tsunami and everything, they know it was created. It wasn't a natural event. And what that says to them, and what they're saying to them with that event is, if you say no to us, look what we can do. If they want to bring Japan to its knees, they've got to find a way, like they did in, with the two, you know, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, at the end of the Second World War. But today, they would have to find an excuse to send the boys in. Well, they can't find an excuse. So instead of that, we'll go the way that they have, because Japan is over. It's over. The amount of radiation that has been released into the Earth's atmosphere is potentially catastrophic. The amount that's been released in the immediate area around Japan and the wider Japan is unthinkably catastrophic. And we you know, I mean, people are already starting to go down with the effects of it, and we've seen nothing yet. This was a, you know, you have these James Bond movies, written by a British intelligence agent, by the way, where you have the guy on the island with the fantastic technology, or the guy with the satellite in the sky that can, you know, cause devastation on Earth. And he holds the world to ransom on the basis of I won't use it only if you do this. Blackmail. Well, this is what's happening in the real world because of this technology that they have. And, you know, Tesla, in an interview with the New York Times in the 1940s, I think it was, maybe a bit earlier, he said that he had the technology to split the Earth in half then. He was producing lightning around his home in New York. The neighbors were calling the police. He was causing kind of mini earthquakes, getting the Earth to shake because of the technology he had, and thousands of windows were breaking before he could switch it off. And Bernard Eastland, the man who applied, first of all, for the patent for the technology that is used in HAARP, based in Alaska, but there's connecting technology all around the world. That's just the main focal point. He mentions Tesla when he's applying for the patent. It's Tesla technology. And if Tesla could, you know, do that devastation he said he could do back in the 1930s and 40s, what the heck can they do now? So instead of, you know, it's not really a case of, what do you mean they can cause earthquakes? That's crazy. No, no. Causing earthquakes is a piece of cake for this technology. And thus, you know, you have a situation in 2010 when in the run-up to it, in the years running up to 2010 around Haiti, it was established that there were major resources under the sea in Haiti waters. In 2010, this devastating earthquake brings the end to Haiti. It just so happened, you know, that the American military were having an exercise at exactly the same time that was based on a scenario of reacting to, I think it was a hurricane or something like that, hitting Haiti. And they were down in Florida doing their exercise. And then the earthquake happened, and they said, we just switched from exercise to real thing. And they were in there in no time. And if you remember, the aid agencies that were trying to land in Port-au-Prince in Haiti, they were saying, in the immediate days after the earthquake, the American military have taken over the airport, so they're not letting us in. They took the place over. And then along came Clinton and Boy Bush as the people that were going to front up the Haiti Reconstruction Fund, and then they disappeared, and Haiti, virtually nothing's been done, because the idea was to destroy Haiti, take it over, because then you've got the resources. And you can do that with an earthquake. You know, how are they going to justify destroying Haiti by dropping bombs on it? I mean, they're not going to do it. But you can do it through HAARP and earthquakes. And the weather wars and the geological wars are not some science fiction fantasy. They're happening now.
Kada ste spominjali tu...
And it's like, where's it coming from? Well, there's a very good chance where it's coming from, because Fukushima has been pouring this stuff out incessantly, day after day after day. So I started looking into it, and for many, many years now, I've been ticking off the ever-increasing sources of radiation to which humans are subjected. And they are so numerous and so when the explosions at Fukushima happened in Japan, from my perspective, having looked at this over a number of years, it was just too much of a gift to this cabal, given the scale, the stunning scale of radiation that not only was released immediately, but has gone on being released ever since. And, you know, there's reports recently out of Europe of finding these high levels of radiation added to all the time. It was very clear to me that there is an agenda here of subjecting humanity to more and more radiation. It's a long story and there's many, many elements to why, but the fact that they're doing it is becoming obvious.